numbered month at 3:30 in the post-meridian, which means this is a meeting of the Rental Housing Advisory Board. I will call this meeting to order. The next order of business is to welcome one of our new members, Anna Lautenbach. Say hi to the people.
Hi.
Will you tell us a little bit about yourself and what brings you to serve on this board?
I guess I reached out to the mayor to see if there were any vacancies, and she reached back out to me and asked me to be on the board.
Cool. Well, thank you for coming. We're glad to have you.
Thank you.
All right. With that, let's have a roll call, please.
Sure. Erickson, Ernst,
Here.
Beyer, Hobbs. Here. Lord, Stribling, Shelton,
Here.
Lautenbach,
Here.
and then other seat is vacant. So we have a quorum today.
All right. And on that note, we are still in search of someone to fill that vacant seat, correct? So if anyone out there is interested in participating in this board, doing some civic service for your community and helping to make impactful change to people that need it in the city of Oshkosh, bring your enthusiasm and your ideas here. The more voices, the more diverse voices we have, the better in terms of the quality of the meetings as well as the quality of the things we do. So with that, we'll move on to item 4 on the agenda, citizen statements. We have some citizens here. Citizen, do you have a statement?
Not today.
Okay. And we'll hear from Ms. Scheer in a few agenda items. So that brings us to item 5, approval of the meetings from our October 12th, 2022 meeting. I will entertain a motion to approve, and once that is offered, we will have discussion if need be. And during that discussion point, we can talk about any edits, etc. So, any motion to approve?
Approved, or so moved, excuse me.
We have a second.
I'll second it.
Cool. Any discussion?
I think I was a little bit vague with my statement on page 8 last meeting, where it says, I replied if they chose to be a good person, then they could, but that's not in the law. I hope it's clear or can become clear that that was in reference to homeowners who might, out of the goodness of their heart, allow someone to stay at their residence. And when I made that statement about it not being in the law, that's because I understood that's not necessarily a legal thing. I only mention that because it was followed by Ernst replying that evictions don't make someone good or bad. It wasn't necessarily in reference to evictions. I hope that made sense or was communicated.
Okay. Take a look at that. Put a little more context into it, perhaps.
Sure.
Thanks.
Good call. Any other discussion on the minutes before we vote?
I have a question about page 6. Fourth paragraph from the bottom, where Lord replied that folks could sell their house if money was a concern, like if landlords weren't receiving enough from renting, but they'd need to put 20% down. Is that how it works with selling houses? I've never sold a house, so I don't know.
Yeah, it looks like, buying a house, that's somewhat of a,
Okay.
you have to put 20% down to purchase it. That's not.
But it is confusing because the previous line is about selling house.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Let me just double check and clarify if need be.
Yeah.
Yep, we can look at that.
Because it may be,
Go through the tape again.
it may well be that's what he said, even if that's a non sequitur. It wouldn't be the first time.
We all make mistakes. It's all good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? All right. All in favor of approving the minutes as amended?
Yes.
We'll take a roll call vote.
Sure. Ernst,
Aye.
Hobbs,
Aye.
Shelton,
Yes.
and Lautenbach.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, minutes are approved. Thank you all. Move on to item 6, partner organizations update, and we welcome back Ms. Lou Shear from AdvoCap to talk about rental assistance in our county.
And it's good to be back. I always feel bad when I miss these meetings because a lot has happened.
Lou, could you please talk into the
yeah.
microphone just so we can
Sure.
catch you on tape?
Sure,
Thank you,
we'll
sir.
go this way.
Yeah.
Okay. A lot has happened and lots the same, if you will. First of all, I just want to let people know that ESI, or applying for energy assistance, stops at the end of September. And that's why my dates will go from October through September, and then they start the funding over again. So only for AdvoCap, not for ESI. ESI this is what they do, so it's an ongoing number for them. Having said that, in September, we were able to accomplish getting over 200 people through the system and get their assistance. So were paid in full with their landlords by the end of September. So they didn't have to carry over, do a new application. So my staff really racked it out, and we did a great job with that. Having said that, we no longer have a wait list. And so we're able to help people immediately, which is beneficial to everyone. Energy Services, Inc., when you have to do your application for HE Plus in order to get energy services, they're making appointments into February, and we're actually doing the applications and updates of the ESI applications ourselves for people. So again, hurrying the process along or keeping it going. It's also interesting that 85% of the people we're helping in all counties are earning less than 50% of county median income. Statewide, it's closer to 68%. So we're finding a bigger need, if you will, in our area. And even though unemployment is low, we know that, we know there's a lot of people who are still finding it very difficult and have zero income or have lost income. The more disturbing issue we're having is that we're finding more and more people have met their 18 months. And the common statement is, what are you going to do for me now? And we have programs, and anytime anyone calls, we encourage them to get engaged with our PASS program, our People Achieving Self-Sufficiency, which is in order to help people kind of sort out what's going on, get them connected to other resources in the community, and to move forward. And a lot of people just say, no, I'm not interested in that. But now the state has started what they call housing stability managers, which is no different than our PASS people. And we have 3 people who are doing this in the counties, working with people who are interested in either connecting to finding a better job, or looking for rentals. We're finding, another statistic is that you're seeing that keeping the current rent, we've paid out quite a few dollars in that, and that's for people who are getting security deposit and up to 3 months rent moving forward. So if you came in today and you said, I found this apartment at 123 Main Street, we would pay help you pay the security deposit, and then we would pay January, February, March rent. So people are in a pretty solid position. But again, we're finding that anywhere between 35 and 50% of the people every week are repeaters. And the short week for us was Thanksgiving. We only assisted 17 people, or 17 households. And we've assisted as many as 42 households during a given week, meaning we've been able to close them and get them going. So like I said, anywhere between 35 and 50% of those people are repeaters, which means 65 to 50% are first-time users. So again, the need is still here. We've gone through about 2/3 of the money, so we're anticipating that it will go at least another year, but we don't know. We never know what the economy is going to bring. We never know what the other parts, what's going on. But like I said, our claim to fame right now is that we're in current time. You call, you get assisted. So that's great news for everyone. You may also know that the governor has announced $2 million to go specifically to help veterans. We don't find a lot of people identify as veterans, but now there's a specific pot of money only for them. I do not believe there's a time limit, meaning they could get more than 18 months, but they have to apply directly with ESI. So in one of our first questions, we now say, are you a veteran? So we know, make sure that they get directed to the right people. You can't make this stuff up stories, and the new twists and turns we're seeing. There are more and more landlords who are not accepting WARE money. They're just done with the program altogether. I had one landlord who came in with somebody who was more than 2 years behind, $1,200 a month rent, didn't seem too crazy, but the $900 a month late fees did. And so only, ultimately that went to the state and that was not assisted. There seemed to be far more questions than answers on that, but that was the way it presented to us. We're expecting more calls starting in January because of utilities being turned back to taxes, and so landlords are going to be aware. A couple of cities already send those forms to or information directly to tenants and to landlords and to homeowners to help through our programs. So we're doing some of that. But it's consistent. Phone is still ringing, but like I said, we're just happy that we're helping people currently, and we're looking for different ways to get people into this housing stability manager, having them talk through what's going to be the next steps. We do have money specifically to assist people who are past 18 months who live in the city of Oshkosh, using some of your funds, and we're starting to tap that. We knew it would be a while because we wanted to use the WARE funds first. And so we're just starting to tap that. But there's, again, so many of our people are not just living in Oshkosh, even if they're living in Winnebago County. So the numbers stay consistent. The staff is getting much more versed at this. But we still get, some interesting calls and some, like I said, 2 years not paying rent. That's a pretty understanding landlord. But $900 late fees a month seem to be a little excessive. So that's, like I said, the state said, no, we couldn't do that. The final thing of you can't make this up, is now there are landlords and property management companies who are asking for up to $100 application fees or administration fees for providing us with the paperwork that we need from their point of view in order to pay them the rent and past due and forward rent that they may have owed. And we're not paying that either. But that's a new twist. That's something that we hadn't seen before. We are happy that people who do not have evictions and other issues are able to find rentals. There seems to be a little bit more movement going on in the market. Not so much the same story for people who do have evictions. So even though we're hearing of a lot of non-renewals of leases, I don't know that people understand the benefit of your lease not being renewed versus an eviction on your record. A lot of the evictions, even if they don't follow all the way through, as I'm sure you've heard about, still, that's what they see when they get CCAP. The other thing we're finding is that we're asking if landlords are setting up application fees that include credit checks and or background checks, and I'm paying for that. I can't get my refund back if I don't get the unit, but then we ask for a copy of those reports so that I can give it to the next landlord so he doesn't have to charge me the same fees to get the same information. And we're finding some of the landlords, in fact, are charging but not actually doing the reports. So, some unintended consequences out of all of this, if you will, is that what we're finding out. And it's just about helping them be better businesses and better partners. Still looking for new situations of landlords who are willing to work with our programs. It's not just our homeless program, but we know Section 8 has the same issue. We know there's a lot of issues with landlords who just don't want to work with any program that has stipulations and rules, as ours do. But we continue to fight the good fight, and we know that there are less people actually going through evictions for the purposes of non-payment of rent. We also know there still continues to be filings for other issues that we have. Tenants have other behaviors besides non-payment. But the state is, the purpose of this money is to keep people stably housed, and this is doing a good job at doing that. And we're continuing to keep those households in their house. So what can I tell you?
So some landlords and property managers are asking for $100 from you for the paperwork they had to fill out to get money from you?
And especially when, late fees are one thing.
Sure.
And I mean, there's legitimate cost incurred. We were starting to question the ones that were $50 a day, and we had those. There was some like that, but like I said, when somebody comes up and says, yeah, the rent is, and the lease was signed, and there are laws against that in the state of Wisconsin. Of course, you can take it in front of a judge, and he would probably say it's not reasonable, but that's not our position. We can't take that position without going to court, but the state just denied it, and the guy was like, oh, okay. He was just happy to get his past due rent, so, it's interesting, but it's far more interesting, and I know this kind of leads into the whole eviction and some of the other problems, but there's landlords that are charging administration fees to renew a lease. If you go month to month, they want an additional $15 or more a month to go month to month. There's a lot of these are coming up with new ideas on how we can nickel and dime some people in ways that, for people who are on fixed income, we're seeing a huge increase in our programs of people 55 and older. People who are living on fixed incomes who are saying, I can't make this dollar stretch any further. And so that's a big concern. Non-renewals or evictions, it really doesn't matter. If I can't afford it, I can't afford it, and there's not alternatives. That's the other issue, is there's no alternatives to truly affordable housing. So we know that's a gap. But I got a lead on a landlord at a meeting earlier today, so he doesn't know it yet, but I'm going to he said, I've never been asked to talk to you or, had an opportunity to meet ABCAP and talk about these programs. So we arranged for that talk. But I don't know them all. If they don't belong to the Landlords Association, they may not have any opportunity or reason to talk to us and us to them. So looking for that. We are trying to get a space at the statewide Landlord Association to talk to them about our programs and public housing programs and the need in all communities. It's not just, here, we know that, but to get kind of an awareness of some of these companies that are just saying, yeah, we're just not going to deal with this at all.
Are you meeting resistance from the state association in that regard?
Not getting any feedback as to, can we have that 50-minute slot? Or can we do, can we even have a table? Not that I think anybody's going to come up to me and say, hey, let's talk about these programs. But I think a kind of a question-answer session would be very beneficial to some landlords, at least to start thinking maybe a little differently than they have about always making more money. You could try, right?
Yes.
Education is part of what I do, so.
I know. Any other questions or comments from Ms. Shear?
All right.
Well, hope with a grain of salt, I suppose. Thanks. And for those interested, the omnibus landlord-tenant law that allows landlords to charge these unlimited fees was sponsored by an Oshkosh Assembly rep who will go unnamed at this time, and as well as the Wisconsin Apartment Association and the Winnebago Apartment Association. And it's also the same law which limits the city's ability to do the rental inspection program. So, yeah, I mean, it's clear that this type of movement towards these unlimited fines is like the direct result of that. And at least to me, that seems to be the intent of it. But that's just my 2 cents. Any other discussion before we move on? All right. Item 6B, Winnebago County Eviction Prevention Task Force update, eviction data. So our eviction task force member, Lindsay Erickson, is not present today to kind of explain the data to us, but it is here in the packet. It's this bar graph and line graph, bar and line graph page, which comes immediately after last meeting's minutes. And you can take a moment to kind of peruse that data, but as we can see, evictions, if numbers hold for December evictions, that they might even be slightly below average compared to 2016 to 2020, or 2016 through November of 2022. And that we are on track for approximately the same number of evictions this year as last. And of course, that's just filed evictions. Not necessarily reflective of judgments, but as Ms. Shear indicated, and as we've discussed before, the conviction of an eviction is not, is one thing, but the filing itself still does damage. Any questions or discussion about this data? Well, I'm sure Lindsay would be happy to, answer an email or something like that if anyone has a specific question.
Yeah, just let us know and we can
Yeah.
get in touch with
Oh,
you.
of course, yeah, you
Counselor
can.
Erickson.
All right. Let's move on to section 7 of our agenda, inspection staff update, and our staff here today.
Yes, well, I would like to introduce you to Nicole Cron. Ms. Cron is our chief building official. So Mr. Zarate moved on from that position, and Ms. Cron is our new chief building official. So she might be at these meetings, or still might be Casey. He's actually out of the office today, so that's why Ms. Cron is here. But we just wanted to go over, some of the activities we've been doing. For social media, we just continue to promote items that we may see out there, programming, vacancies on the board, any other information we try to put on social media. And then as far as the rental registry program goes, since our last meeting, we have not done a mailer yet. But just there was a reminder, we did do a mailer in later July. We sent out 91 letters, and we completed 2 inspections. So the rate of letters sent out versus how many inspections we are doing continues to be usually about 3% or lower. We are still doing the right now what we're doing is putting together our rental unit database. So any parcel in the city of Oshkosh, if it has like a different owner, like the owner address and like a mailing address, if that's different, that kind of poses a trigger to us, and then we send them a letter saying, is this a rental? And then they can check yes or no, and we get that information and include it in the database, and then that's what we use to send these letters. So that's what we're working on right now, is gathering that information to start sending out the letters next year.
And that database is just the registry. That's where you're.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
For those 2 inspections, were the same number of violations, like 5 or 6 per unit, did we
Yeah,
find?
that's kind of been the minimum, what we have. And then just kind of on a side note, the actual complaints we get, not us reaching out to them, but the complaints that we may get, either through somebody calling, stopping in, sending something in see, click, fix, sending a letter, an email, whatever it may be. Right now, year to date, we're about 82 complaints. And just for reference, last year we had 120 complaints. In 2020, we had 85. So we're somewhat in that same area. We had a little bit more in 2021, and it seems to be going down more. So good, bad, I'm not sure, but obviously we address those, when we receive them and try to help them out in the situation. And then as I think we've talked about before, with our housing study, we have looked at ways that we can encourage folks to, make the repairs or update, the house to code and everything. And we are looking at programs to, hopefully incentivize folks to do that, to make the houses and the homes safer for the occupants.
Right on. I heard some grumblings of the mandatory program maybe coming to an end because of the low response rates.
Yeah, I only want to say, maybe just look at reconfiguring it, finding out a better way to receive cooperation or, better way for us to, like I kind of mentioned before, incentivize people to allow the city into the rental units to try to find those codes, but then at the same time, maybe offer some programs that could help them fix them. So that's something I mentioned to council. It's something that we're going to be talking about in early next year to see kind of what their appetite is. But I think we need to have something.
Yes.
This program's not working for many of the reasons you mentioned before with our limitations with the state statutes. So we want to have something in place to be more proactive besides just relying on complaint-based.
Okay.
So obviously we'll continue to keep, the board in the loop with that and to be part of those conversations.
Do you think it's still worth promoting the mandatory inspection program at this point?
Right now, I think once we get our database together, we'll probably take a look at it in early next year and see. And if anything, maybe just trying to educate people more that we're here, that we're willing to come out and take a look, at your property to make sure that it is meeting code and it's compliant. So that's something that we'll have to take a look at.
Okay. I have a segue into the next agenda item pertaining to that stuff, but are there any questions or comments about the inspection program or ideas for social media content? If you have ideas for social media content, just contact the city staff and we'll get them out there. I think it's hard to find stuff that's like neutral in tone sometimes, but
Yeah, the extension has some of their courses, and so we
Right.
get that out. Some of our programs, when we're promoting that, we try to get that out. Obviously, these meetings, anything we see that might make sense, we try to get it on there to be somewhat active on Facebook.
could probably promote the holiday light drop off, or no, there's a drop-off box in the lobby here at City Hall for
toys?
recycling old Christmas lights, old string
yes,
lights,
yes.
so they don't just go into the trash.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that would definitely be things, and we can easily repost what the city of Oshkosh, our, the citywide organization has, and we can easily repost it on our page too.
Right on. Questions, comments, any other discussion?
I just thought it would be nice. I feel like maybe this is appropriate, having the page when nothing else better is to share, just sharing when the dates and times are for city council meetings, for example. Anything that pertains to renters and landlords, and that would be one of the things. I've just noticed, I try to follow a lot of the local pages on Facebook, of local government, and I'm surprised how many pages don't talk about when those are. And I feel like it would just be helpful to tenants and landlords to know.
Sure.
Definitely. Okay. Move on then to item 8 of the agenda, the public information campaign. So, if you've been handing out and picking up brochures, thank you. I've sort of wanted a clear idea of the future of the inspection program before kind of moving forward on some of the poster designs, just because the content of the brochure is linked to the content of the poster. And I still haven't made like a design that I really like yet, so that was any better than the last one. So
I mean, the content I still think is applicable whether we have the program or not.
right.
You know, to help folks if they have issues.
And there's only like a few sentences in the brochure which talk about the mandatory inspection
Sure.
program.
Sure.
So
If you need extras, we do have a few. We've been putting them out on our floor and, you know, other places that we see fit. If you need some, please let me know.
okay. I suppose then, yeah, it doesn't do any harm to continue distributing the brochures. I mean, the program is still in place, and even if it's not in place, like, it doesn't really affect the implications of the content, I guess. So, all right. With that in mind, I mean, does anyone have any new ideas beyond what we've discussed in the past for places to distribute the brochures? All right. I would say then, I guess pertaining to the poster, I'll keep tinkering with it once we have a better idea after that council meeting early next year about what they feel like doing with the program. We'll make some more, I don't know, permanent adjustments, and then make sure all the content is coherent in that way.
Sure.
Questions, discussion? All right. Item 9, discussion item from the previous meeting. So I had suggested in our last meeting that we look into ways to see what the city can do to help alleviate some of the burden on tenants that's put in place by eviction filings. We discussed several reasons why, like, the filing itself is not indicative of a tenant's ability to pay, and as we've heard additional information today, that eviction filing can be exceptionally damaging for someone's ability to find housing, regardless as to whether or not a judgment is rendered on that eviction. So some places in the country have tried like striking or expunging those records, especially ones during that were entered during the pandemic time, because again, that time was messed up for a lot of renters and not necessarily reflective of their quality or ability to pay as a tenant. What we ran into were, issues with like what different levels of government can do, so city versus county versus state, et cetera. And on our packet here, the last few pages are a memo from Ms. Nyforth, sort of summarizing what the city attorney had to say.
Yeah, and you basically just said it. There's different units of government that do control this. The city really has absolutely no involvement with it. It's more of a county function. And then obviously CCAP is at a state level. So that's something that we can't really do. We can't, ask them to remove it. And then I did include the state statute that we had mentioned earlier, where there's certain things, that we cannot, enact any ordinances, to place following different limitations on landlords and in their court records and other things like that. So credit information. So this from a city perspective, and I did talk with Ms. Lawrence, and unfortunately she wasn't able to make this meeting, but she did say that we are really limited from a city standpoint of what we can do, and it's more of a county, statewide effort that would have to take place.
Well, yes. So we can't even like ask the county to consider action.
I would have to talk with her and see if that would be something. It would probably have to go through council
Right.
as a resolution.
Yes.
To support it.
Yes.
So that would have to be, something if this group would like to move forward with that. And then I guess at the same time, I'd have to see what the county's limitations are. Are they able to do anything also?
Okay. Do we know who, like, at the county we would talk to or might be willing to come in and talk to us?
I'll have to get back to you on that.
Okay. Because I do think this is something worth at least looking into, because the implications, as we've heard today, if nothing else, are like pretty big and pretty substantial. And as it is, tenants are those tenants are severely disadvantaged compared to the power that landlords have in that regard.
Yeah, Ms. Cron just pointed out, under here, under the section, under A, it says no city, village, town, or county may enact an ordinance. So we can certainly get a little more clarification, but from that standpoint, the county might be limited to what they can do also.
Do y'all think this is something worth pursuing still? Because if you don't think so, then we can focus, move our focus as a board onto other matters and see what private citizens can do in the regard of making that level of change.
I mean, it would be a legislative
Yep.
change. I will look to see from a county standpoint, I will look into that and,
Okay.
County contact, if there is anything where somebody could come and talk. And then maybe also look to see if there's any organizations out there that might be better suited to be able to maybe lead that effort. That might be, maybe, obviously with this, maybe board support, but like have more of the resources to push that forward perhaps.
I do think it would be helpful to have the support of the Winnebago County Board. I mean, and have that, I guess what I would wonder then is, with that support, if we are granted that, then what? And that's kind of where we're at. So do I want to pursue this? Absolutely. I don't know, though, if it will be fruitful, and we won't know until we try, but it's difficult when the state of Wisconsin, has put ordinances in place that essentially say that only the state of Wisconsin decides what landlords' limits are. That kind of leaves us all as folks, to have to lobby the state of Wisconsin or nothing.
Yeah, and that's of course intentional. Like the landlord groups in the state have a lot of support in the state legislature. Some of the most important and powerful legislators are landlords themselves, so it's really no surprise. Unfortunately.
Right.
So I guess to that end, maybe we see if the county, if someone from the county can talk to us next time, and if it's just still a non-starter, then we move on.
Okay. Sounds good.
Does that make sense to everyone?
Yep.
Questions, comments, concerns? Thank you to city staff and the city attorney for putting that information together for us. Item 10, other business. We'll be meeting again in February of 2023. What do we want to do at that time? I generally think it's a good idea to kind of review our strategic plan and our goals as a board, which is a document that we usually, that we have out, that we haven't referenced in a while. But if staff could send those documents to the board again via email, so we can think about what else we want to add, or what we've, talk about what we've achieved, new initiatives, things we want to change, refocus on. That's important to show to council also that we, are doing stuff and not just blowing hot air or whatever.
Do you want me to add that as an agenda item then?
Yes, yes. And if we could get those,
Beforehand?
well before,
Yep.
that'd be helpful.
Absolutely. Okay.
Any other ideas, pet projects, things you want to talk about, things you want to learn about?
I do have something I want to bring up. So I've had folks ask me things like, a concern has been brought about the no move out months that some landlords have written into their leases with tenants, basically saying, they commonly look like from, November to February, no move outs. And it's written into the lease and the tenant signs the lease. So folks have asked me, is this legal? Is this allowed? And that sent me on a journey to contact the Wisconsin Bar Association, who referred me to the Wisconsin State Law Library. Wisconsin State Law Library informed me of Administrative Code 13409, which is the prohibited rental agreement provisions. Basically, 10 things landlords cannot put in their lease. And they informed me that's not on the list. So landlords, they can put that in the lease if they want, and there's no law against that, no move-out clause. It's not listed as prohibited. The no move-out clause is inherently unfair, however. It's very pro-landlord. It only harms the tenant because evictions, there's no move-out clause, there's no eviction clause. Like you can't be evicted November through February. You absolutely can. If we're going to be fair to tenants and landlords, move-outs should also be allowed in winter months, just as evictions are. The Wisconsin State Law Library referred me to the Bureau of Consumer Protection. The Bureau of Consumer Protection, they did inform me that if tenants wish to break the lease anytime, including during no move-out months, there exists something called State Statute 704. So State Statute 704 requires at least 28 days notice in writing to be given from a tenant to a landlord in order to break the lease and vacate. I have a website here for reference if folks would like me to email that. It's 704.193 to be exact. And essentially what that says is, to my understanding, and again, I'm not an attorney, I'm curious to hear from an attorney regarding this, but that tenants do have the right to break a no move-out clause agreement in a lease, provided they provide 28 days notice to their landlord. Landlords must make a good faith effort to fill the apartment with another tenant, and the lease officially ends once a landlord has occupied the unit with a new tenant, was my understanding of that statute. Again, not an attorney, opening this up to discussion, and would like people smarter than me to look at this. Essentially, if the landlord tries to say things like, I disagree that that's the state statute, this isn't enough notice, the tenant, according to the Bureau of Consumer Protection, should then contact the Bureau of Consumer Protection and file a complaint with them against their landlord for the landlord breaking State Statute 704. So I'm bringing this up for two reasons. I'm bringing this up, number one, to confirm that my understanding of it is correct. And number two, if it is correct, to bring awareness to this to tenants, because we should know as tenants. Tenants do have, it seems to me that they have more rights than we may have before realized with the state of Wisconsin, at least in regards to being able to break a lease under essentially any circumstances, as long as they provide 28 days notice in writing to their landlord.
Okay. Well, why don't you send me that information? I'll share it with the group, and then I will work with our city attorney on maybe getting some, an explanation on that, how she interprets it.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, and I'm happy to do so.
One small thing, I think the Bureau of Consumer Protection is the Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection.
Let me see, Wisconsin State Law Library referred to them, or referred to the ATCP.
Yeah.
They,
Ag, Trade, Consumer Protection.
Yeah.
yes, okay, so that they likely are the same thing then?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
All right, yeah, I think that's worth something we can definitely explore in the next meeting as well.
Okay.
All right. Anything else?
Yeah, I guess I'd just like to follow it up with a,
Sure.
it's almost, for lack of a better term, backdoor language, so to speak, if that makes sense. Like, we wouldn't necessarily, as tenants, know to look for that.
Right.
So to follow it up to get on the same page with you, TJ, what else don't we know to look for?
Right.
And I feel like we as a board should maybe take the time to figure out what else it is that we don't know to look for. That would better equip us with the knowledge to be able to pass forward.
And that was sort of the intent of the information campaign was to, obviously we can't cover like everything, you know,
Yeah.
in a 2-page brochure or whatever, but yeah, that's something, I think you're totally right. And, you know, ignorance of the laws and the delegation of, or, you know, ignorance of the responsibilities of landlords and tenants is something like that ignorance gets exploited too often, leading to a lot of problems for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would agree, and I think that's you know, letting tenants know what they don't know. I think is like a good, and landlords too, right? Is a good way to visualize like the goal of the information campaign. So appreciate that. Anything else? I would entertain a motion to adjourn then.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second that.
Are there any opposed to adjourning? I would say we are adjourned then. Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you for your ideas. We'll see you in 2023. Stay safe, stay healthy. Happy holidays. Hail Santa.